Hello, this is Lee back once again for another video. And something interesting is, sometimes it really takes a bad movie to make you appreciate a good movie. And those were my thoughts back in the day when I first saw Pacific Rim. That's right, Pacific Rim. I meant to talk about this ages ago, but just now getting to it. Sorry, I've been so busy. But I went and saw Pacific Rim Uprising, also known as Pacific Rim 2, the sequel, in theaters. It was a gorgeous film, digital movie actually. I saw it in 3D, not IMAX, but digital projection. John Boyega, a lot of people gave him a lot of hard time for his, part in The Last Jedi, which was horrible, or in the forgettable Force Awakens, even though it was one of the most successful movies of all time, according to dollar value at the box office. But John Boyega, I kind of wrote him off as, not a very good actor. But honestly, I thought he did quite well in Pacific Rim Uprising. The thing about Pacific Rim Uprising is, though, I'd forgotten just how good Pacific Rim was, the original Pacific Rim. It's really a great movie. It's not really a comedy film. It takes place on your Earth. In the future, when kaiju are coming up out of the vortex or whatever, out of the rift to attack humanity. And the Jaegers, the big robots with people inside them, have to fight them off. And this is a great story because this is a live-action tribute to all of those anime, the Japanimation stories that have been going on for ages, where, this constant trope, this constant theme of big robots and the people inside them that have to control them. And the kaiju, of course, is just named for a giant monster, like, Godzilla, Ghidorah, all these big monsters. Japan in the media, in film, in cartoons, video games, just obsessed with giant robots and giant monsters. Something about those things just incredibly popular for so long, and not just for children. All these stories, Gundam and Neon Genesis Evangelion and all these stories, to name but a few. Robotech and everything, all going back in the day. But Pacific Rim is a tribute to all that because, there are Asian characters. There's actually very international, it's almost like the original Star Trek. You get characters from every culture, every religion, every nation. They're all together and they're inside these robots. And the people inside the robots, there always has to be two, at least two. Of course, there's one that has three, triplets. They're often twins or it's a couple because they have to be bonded in their minds. They go inside each other's minds and their memories. They're linked together, and it's like conjoined twins, where it's like one person controls one side of the body, the other person controls the other side, and they're actually connected. So their muscles, they have to their legs are connected to the legs of the robot, and so they have to like they're on an elliptical machine, and they're like and you see the robot climbing, and they're moving the arms. They have to go like this to make it punch, and it has a sword or a gun. But it's just really exciting, really fun, and there's a human story behind it. So Pacific Rim, great movie. What Pacific Rim 2 does is it starts out, John Boyega, is the son of the commander in the first film. He's a very charismatic, very stoic man. He's played by this, African British, as you would call it, a black man. But he fulfills the role of the stoic father figure, like in Neon Genesis or in so many other anime. The stiff upper lip, a distant father figure, almost like a deity. And he stands far away in his command chair, and he has his reasons for doing what he does, and you hardly ever see a glimpse except just a glimpse of his humanity and his past. And his daughter, who is, I forget now if she's Japanese, I think. But anyway, it's like, you finally discover the connection. She's really, really good. And he trains her. Of course, I'm talking about the original Pacific Rim. Well, in Pacific Rim 2, John Boyega is the son. He's like, well, I'm not really my father. And they show him at this party just getting drunk and just wasted out of his mind and just kind of pathetic. And he's got a cool haircut, but then he gets called to duty. And he meets a little girl who has like a little tiny Jaeger, a little tiny robot she can control. And now instead of, their legs being hooked up to the legs of the robot, they're just on this little treadmill like an Oculus. They have like a little treadmill and they just run down the treadmill. It looks kind of funny. Well, they kill off some characters, and the direction of the movie just wasn't very good. I mean, one of the daughter character from the first movie, you expected, she's proven herself. She is just as good a Jaeger pilot as anyone. But instead, she never gets to be in a Jaeger. She just is in a helicopter and crashes and kills her. And it's sad. It's just played for pathos, but it's just really disappointing. And it takes it until the end of the movie. Just about the end of the movie before you finally get a good fight. I mean, yes, at one point, this Jaeger comes in. It kind of looks like one of the classic Jaegers, and it's attacking everyone. And it's like, why is it attacking everyone? So the good guys have to kind of fight him, and inside there's just a brain. It's a brain of one of these kaiju inside a Jaeger. And I didn't know the plot of the story. I thought it was going to be like, they rebel against humanity or something like that. But no, it wasn't like that at all. It was that the bad guys were trying to take over, and so one of the scientists is completely corrupted. He merged with the brain of one of these kaiju, and he kind of turned evil, and they gave him orders to take over and kill everyone. So he's kind of an annoying character. And he creates all these nano-machines to kill the Jaegers. And there's a big fight. They get all the Jaegers together in the city, and it looks very much like a video game. It's really bright. It's really sunny in the city, and you can see every detail, and there's kind of like a fuzzy haze over the lens so that the CGI is perfectly blended. And I looked it up, and this movie had a much smaller budget than the original Pacific Rim. The original Pacific Rim was kind of a surprise hit. And just as happened with the original Pacific Rim, I loved that movie because I was so disappointed with the Legendary Films, 2014 Godzilla. In that movie, Godzilla was hardly in it. I mean, and all the characters were so emotionless except one guy who was freaking out all the time, and yes, his wife dies, but it's like, it was just not a good movie. And the monster fights were cool, but they were over in 2 seconds. It was so short and so disappointing. And yes, Godzilla looked great. He looked, powerful and huge, and he had kind of like a dolphin face. But I was so disappointed with that, and Pacific Rim gave me what I wanted, which was giant robots fighting giant monsters, and it looked great. And the characters were cool, they were interesting, they were edgy, they were, humorous. There was fun moments from, beginning to end. And really, I didn't realize how bad Pacific Rim 2, Pacific Rim Uprising was until I went back and watched the original. So now, I went back and I purchased the Blu-ray just so I could own the best movie of that series, really. So forget Pacific Rim Uprising. Forget Godzilla 2014. Watch this instead. This is what you want. The Blu-ray. If you watch this, compare the fights. I mean, yes, the fights are mostly at night, and they're mostly in the ocean, because that's where the rift is. But you just see all the detail. You see the glistening metal of the Jaegers. You see the water dripping off. You see those little droplets. And it really gives you a sense of scale. These robots are huge. They're gigantic. And they're very dynamic. They move, and you see the human beings inside. You see them bonding. We see the Jaegers damaged. The humans are because they react. The feedback, and the vulnerability, the Jaegers get damaged, and you see, parts of them ripped away, and you see the vulnerable humans exposed inside, and of course the kaiju are these huge monsters. And yes, there's kind of a cool scene where the kaiju gets ripped apart, and then it kind of sews itself back together in Pacific Rim 2. but it's just not enough. There just isn't enough of what we wanted. I mean, if you watched Pacific Rim 2 in the theater, you'd probably come out of the theater going, yeah, that was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed that. It's kind of like if there was a big long movie where it was really boring and not much happened, but then there was a really exciting scene at the very, very end. Kind of reminds me of Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones didn't start off very well, but it had just... I would say Attack of the Clones is better than Pacific Rim Uprising because there was so much of a third act, so much excitement. Whereas Pacific Rim kind of gets started right off with a big battle. And yes, there's some downtime in between, but when there's downtime, there's people training, people fighting hand-to-hand combat. And yes, there's hand-to-hand combat in Pacific Rim 2, but Pacific Rim 2 feels like a TV special. It feels like Pacific Rim, the sitcom, the TV show, now on Disney. It feels like a kid's version. You know how they used to make, like, there's Tiny Toon Adventures and the new Archies, the little Archies, whatever. It was always like a kidified version, a dumbed-down, scaled-down version of something cool. So really Pacific Rim Uprising is a movie that I liked at first, but then the more I thought about it, and the more I rewatched this, the more I thought, forget the sequel. We don't even need a sequel. This is the movie, and Pacific Rim Uprising is not the sequel we deserve as fans. It's really too bad. It was really a waste. They deserved better. And they had, Ron Perlman. They had good actors. Idris Elba, a great actor. The supporting cast was good. It really was great overall. Just nothing like that. I mean, some of the robot designs were cool, but you hardly got to see them. It was all at the end of the movie, in the third act. You could have just walked in halfway through and not missed much, really. But I will say, despite the mediocre quality, I would say maybe if Pacific Rim is a 10, it's not a 10, but let's say it's a 10, then Pacific Rim Uprising is like a 7, 6.5. It's not a failure, but it's not great compared to the original. But I would still say, besides that, John Boyega did a great job. I like his accent. I think he played a far less stereotypical Disney character in this movie than he did in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. He just seemed kind of a pathetic character in those, and his bad jokes. I mean, he makes a few jokes in Pacific Rim Uprising, but they're appropriate. I mean, people use gallows humor in tough situations, but it was way too jokey in the Star Wars, kind of Marvel-esque. People talk about the Marvel humor, ruining dramatic scenes with bad jokes. So, I'd say kudos to John Boyega for, doing the best he could with the character and the situation, but Pacific Rim Uprising, can't even say the name anymore. It's just not very good. So, skip it. I mean, it's too late. It's on a 4K now. I don't know why you'd want to watch just that short fight scene at the very end in 4K definition. Honestly, I'm kind of over it. I think Blu-ray looks great on high definition. I don't know why you'd really want to invest that much money. And I mean, there's a few movies that would probably be, good, but if you're an early adopter, there's hardly anything to watch. There's hardly any games to play in 4K. I mean, you need the player, you need the TV, and the media. I mean, Blu-ray 3D kind of went nowhere. So whatever. The dynamic range is the next thing, so whatever. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Pacific Rim. Great movie, well worth, revisiting, and especially if you liked Pacific Rim Uprising. Watch the original again. You'll be surprised how great it was. It's a great movie. It's very exciting. It's fun. It's funny. And it's worth watching again and again. And it's a great tribute to the giant robot, giant monster legacy from Japan. So, thanks